My name is Sam Pfeffer. I was born in Spring Valley, Illinois in 1926. I was an attorney and owned a car dealership in Skokie, Illinois, near Chicago. We were cleaning house, and my wife had me throw out some magazines, and one of the magazines was open to a story of a community in India that considered themselves Jews. I don't know, a week or so later, I read the article. The Bnei Menashe claimed to be descendants of one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel called Manasseh. They observe the Torah, they observe the dietary laws, they observe the Sabbath, they observe the religious holidays, and they identify themselves as Jews. Though the Bnei Menashe were doing their best to live as Jews, they did not have a Torah. I decided to obtain a Torah and get it to the Bnei Menashe in India. Hillel Halkin is a writer who lives in northern Israel near Haifa. His book, Across the Sabbath River, tells the story of his quest to discover the history of the Kuki, Chin, Mizo people and their belief that they are descended from a lost tribe of Israel.
Well, I've always been interested in the lost tribes legend. I've been interested since I was a boy in that. And I had heard of Rabbi Avichail. He is basically the spiritual mentor of the Bnei Menashe. He was the first really knowledgeable Jew to come to Northeast India in the late 1980s to teach them modern Orthodox Judaism. I had never heard of the Bnei Menashe. I went to him and I said, listen, if I can raise the money for us to go on a lost tribe hunting expedition, where would you like to go? We decided on Western China. And at the very last minute, Avichail said he would like to stop in Northeast India in Aizawl, the capital of Mizoram too, because he had his flock there that he wanted to visit. So that was really added almost as an afterthought. And that's how I first got to Mizoram and to Northeast India and to the Bnei Menashe. This whole society that we're talking about, which goes by many different names and is generally referred to as the Kuki Chin Mizos. It's an ethnic group living in Northeast India and across the border in Western Burma. Historically consisted of dozens of tribes who were very closely related linguistically, ethnically, in terms of their religious traditions, but who also were constantly at war with each other. What happened after the independence of India was an independence movement for this people, created a state called Mizoram, which is lived in by about 1 million members of this ethnic group, who today go by the name of Mizos. The same ethnic group spills over the border into Manipur, where, unlike Mizoram, it's a minority. It's about 1/4 of the population. And the name Kuki has been applied to them. It's actually a Bengali name, which goes back to the 19th century. But Kuki is the word used to describe the same ethnic group in Manipur. In Burma, they're called the Chin.
Tell us about your trips.
Well, the first trip was a short one. It was with Avichail. It came after we had been in China and Thailand, which I found intensely interesting and comical wild goose chases. I mean, Avichail was, looking for lost Jews in the wilds of China and in Thailand, and thinking he had found them when, as far as I was concerned, he wasn't looking at anything remotely like lost Jewish tribes or Israelite tribes. So in advance, I expected India was just going to turn out to be another wild goose chase, the same story again. And I came there, very, very skeptical of the whole thing. But that 1 week on the first trip that I spent in Aizawl was a real eye-opener. I saw the local community, the Bnei Menashe community, and I saw really what serious and dedicated Jews they were. They're obsessed with this question of are they or are they not a lost tribe or the lost tribe of Menashe? I left at the end of that week really both intrigued and confused and bewildered and excited. I had seen something which I didn't understand. It stirred my interest. I felt that either there was some kind of colossal autosuggestion going on here, a whole society, a whole federal state in India was talking itself into a fever that it was a lost tribe, or else there was some kind of real historical basis, incredible as it might seem, that had to be explored. So I decided to go back a second time. I went back for the second time, which was much longer. I went back for 5 weeks. For the first half of that time, I became progressively more convinced that this whole thing was simply a 20th century fabrication. But people began coming to me with stories, with traditions, ancient songs. What happened was that the English missionaries brought the Bible with them. The natives first were introduced to the New Testament because that's what the missionaries were basically trying to sell them. The Old Testament came later, but in the 1930s and 40s, as the Old Testament began to be known among them and parts of it began to be translated into their native languages, a few of them at first simply began to look at the Old Testament, at the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, and say, hey, there are things here that are familiar. We know this story, and we know this name, and this is something we know about. And for example, they said, here, this story about the children of Israel leaving Egypt and crossing the Red Sea. We have an old song about the exact same thing.
I can only sing one sentence. Tuy chunga hunglong do, song chunga hunglong do, tuy ikhai.
And there are several versions of it, but the basic version goes something like this. When we were preparing for the great winter festival, all our enemies drowned in the sea. There was fire by night and cloud by day. We ate birds from the heaven and drank water from the rock. There's also a line about the sea dividing in two. Now, in those 4 or 5 lines, there are at least 5 or 6 details from the story of the Exodus. So the sea dividing in two, and the enemies drowning in it, fire by night that led the children of Israel through the desert, and the cloud by day, and the water from the rock, and the bird from the heavens. There's no possibility that by sheer coincidence, a song with so many details and so few lines, resembling so much the story of the Exodus, could have just coincidentally cropped up in another part of the world. So suddenly I was faced with the fact that this song is old. It didn't come from the Christian missionaries. It didn't come from the Bible. I mean, not from the written Bible that the missionaries brought. It came from somewhere else. And then the question begins, well, where?
In 721 BCE, Samaria, in the northern kingdom of Israel, fell to the Assyrians after a siege lasting 3 years. Over the centuries, the descendants of the people exiled from Samaria drifted through Media and what we now call Iran and Afghanistan, eventually reaching the eastern provinces of China. The Chinese enslaved these Jewish people, killing some and forcing assimilation of the survivors. According to the traditions of the Bnei Menashe, some fled to modern Myanmar and the remote northeastern corner of India. Today, the descendants of these people are known as the Kuki Chin Mizo and include the Bnei Menashe. When I was in Israel, I did meet Rabbi Avichail, who in the 90s was responsible for bringing about 800 of these Bnei Menashe into Israel. Rabbi Avichail is the head of an organization called Amashav.
I do it not exactly like researchman. I did it as a rabbi that believed that the 10 tribes of Israel is very important for our Geulah. Liberation of Israel will start when they will come. And I decided to start this research about the 10 tribes. It means where they are, how they live, etc., and how they will come back.
And he too told me the same thing, that these people were interested and wanted a Torah to unite them with the Jews of the world. I was told you can't go to Northeast India on a passport, you need a special permit. And one of the requirements was that you had to be recommended by 2 people from India. And a friend of mine named Sabra Minkus had dealings with India, and Sabra knew the ambassador from Bhutan to India. Through him, 1 week later, we had a permit.
My name is Sabra Minkus. I live in Glenview, Illinois. Belong to Beth Hillel congregation in Wilmette. One day, Sam, who I knew through Beth Hillel, asked me if I was interested in going to India. And what started out as a very simple project of taking a Torah to the Bnei Menashe turned into one of the most wonderful experiences and adventures that I have ever had. The Torah is the center of learning for the people. In order for them to live the Jewish life that they are trying to live and are striving to live, it was a necessity for them to have a Sefer Torah or kosher Torah.
Every Sabbath, every denomination reads the same portion of the Torah. So whether in America, whether you're in India, no matter where you're at in the world, when you read that portion of the Torah, you know that Jews worldwide are reading the same Torah.
For these people, the Torah also represented a connection to the Jewish diaspora as well as to Israel. And they certainly are the extended part of the diaspora, but it made them feel closer to everyone and helped make them realize that their dream could be a reality.
Now it's a question of bringing the Torah to India. Our rabbi would not allow us to ship it, so I went to Lufthansa.
The irony was Lufthansa Airlines let the Torah fly first class at no charge, all the way to India from Chicago.
A large, excited crowd waited for several hours in the hot sun at Impal Airport. Then the dancing and cheering and tears of joy began.
We are happy to bring to Manipur for you, this is your Torah. It no longer belongs to us, it belongs to you.
When we left India and had given them the Torah, I felt pleased that the Bnei Menashe now had the special connection to their faith they longed for. Those that felt drawn to Israel could take the next steps on their quest to return to their homeland. I should have known it wasn't going to be that simple. Within months of getting back to Chicago, Sabra and I were in Israel. Delivering the Torah wasn't the end I assumed it would be. It was time to connect 3,000 years of history and half a world of geography to the realities of 21st century Israel. We had to find out what it was like for the Bnei Menashe already there and those seeking to come.
The Bnei Menashe, when they come to Israel, are not considered Jewish according to halakha. And they do not fall under the law of return, which only goes back 3 generations. In other words, if someone can demonstrate that they had a Jewish grandparent, then by Israeli law, the Jewish agency can bring them over as a new immigrant to Israel with all the benefits involved.
We were in Israel in October of 2004, met Michael Freund. Michael was a former executive director of Amishav, which is Rabbi Avichail's organization that brought the Bnei Menashe in. It is a feeling of Michael Freund that these people should be religious, but they've got to be a part of the Israeli society. Otherwise, they're always going to be stepchildren in Israel.
If a Jew moves here from Argentina or France or the former Soviet Union or Ethiopia, immediately upon arrival, they receive a range of benefits, from housing to education. The community that accepts them also receives various benefits. But because the Bnei Menashe, when they come to Israel, do not receive those benefits, we needed to find communities that were willing to take them in, were willing to invest resources in these people, knowing in advance that they would not be receiving any significant government aid for at least the first 6 to 9 months.
The first Bnei Menashe to settle in Israel lived in the occupied territories.
We approached various communities in the Galilee, in the Negev, places such as Mitzpe Ramon and Dimona, kibbutzim in the Galil, in the Galilee, all of whom in principle were happy to accept new immigrants, including the Bnei Menashe, but in practice, because of the economic situation here in Israel in recent years, simply didn't have the resources to do so. The only places that were willing to make that investment were the settlements.
Takes getting used to it, in a sense, like, where I live in Manipur, where I come from, shots are like, it's ringing like in the background all the time. And here I don't think like this is any different here. In the sense like it doesn't bother me that much anymore. I do worry, but I think like, the security, I hope like, is good. In a sense like I have confidence in the security that they're giving around here. In a sense like the fences all over and the soldiers everywhere. And I think in this case, I think like, okay, there might be a little cause to worry, but not overtly. I shouldn't be overly like worried.
The reason why we're out here in the suburb, in the community, is very simple, because a lot of the Israelis, the regular Israelis, let's put it that way, for lack of a better word, they're not used to seeing a Chinese-looking Indian Jew.
The interior minister decided that, they're not even Jews, why should we accept them? It's just a burden on the economy of Israel, so no more. Not everybody wants to have new immigrants. It's only Kiryat Arba and Gush Katif that opened their arms wide open and accepted the Bnei Menashe.
We'd like to live everywhere else, but the thing is that like, we need to be invited and accepted there as well. We want to be part of the Israeli society, definitely.
The Interior Ministry made its decision 2 years ago to freeze the Aliyah. And as a result, I decided that the best thing to do was, rather than to be reliant upon the goodwill of whichever minister happens to be serving as the Interior Minister, we should circumvent the Interior Ministry and approach the Chief Rabbinate.
Israeli law at present is that anybody converting outside of Israel, whether by Orthodox, Reform, or conservative conversions, is considered Jewish for the purpose of registration under the law of return.
In August of 2004, I traveled to India with a delegation sent by the Israeli chief rabbinate. The Israeli Sephardi chief rabbi, Rabbi Shlomo Amar. I approached him earlier this year about the Bnei Menashe issue. He agreed to send 2 rabbinical court judges as his official representatives to visit with the community, to explore their heritage, and to learn more about them, and then to return to Israel and report back to him.
The chief rabbi, like you know, he sent a rabbinical court to study, to search the situation, the history of Bnei Menashe.
Well, Sam, let me tell you, it was a very moving scene when last August, when I traveled to Imphal, the capital of Manipur, together with the rabbinical court judges. We visited the synagogue there in Imphal, and of course we showed the chief rabbis the beautiful Sefer Torah that you had donated to the community. They took out the Sefer Torah from the Ark, and they opened it up, and they saw that it, in fact, was on that week's Torah reading, which clearly indicated that the Torah was being used and that it had just been used on the previous Sabbath. The 2 judges asked if any young members of the Bnei Menashe community there knew how to read from the Torah and how to chant according to the traditional chant that is used.
We start with one of the young people, and he starts to read the Torah, okay? And then we say, okay, maybe he's a very special, very smart young man.
One by one, they lined up, they approached the Torah, they picked up the yad, the pointer that is used when reading the Torah.
And we continue with the second, and with the third, fourth, and there are a lot of the young people, and it was a really very, very special moment.
With the 2 Dayanim standing on each side, they began to read from the Torah in Hebrew, with the chant.
And because the rabbis that we visit there, we really saw that the contact, the emotion from Bnei Menashe with the Torah, it's not only by words.
Here you are standing in the far reaches of northeastern India with these long-lost descendants of the Jewish people. And they were able to open a Sefer Torah that had been donated by someone from Chicago in the United States, and they were able to read the weekly Torah portion.
When we have to take decisions in issues that there are in a very, very global point of view, like Bnei Menashe, for sure that the decision is from the chief rabbi. And he took the decision to send the rabbinical court to convert the Bnei Menashe.
According to Israeli law, if these people convert to Judaism outside of Israel and then come to Israel and ask for Israeli citizenship under the law of return, that too cannot be contested.
Once the conversions are done in India, the Bnei Menashe will be able to make aliyah to Israel as Jews in every respect. Just like a Jew from New York or London or Sydney can move to Israel and immediately receive Israeli citizenship and all the rights and benefits of a new immigrant, so too, with this new procedure in place, the Bnei Menashe will also come to Israel and immediately will be recognized by the government as Jews and Israeli citizens.
I believe that there is some validity to their claim. I think that they were part of the group of 10 tribes that were expelled in 721 BCE. I believe they were enslaved by the Assyrians for a period of time. At that point, we sort of lose track of what happened to them.
You know, I keep having to explain to people in India because they themselves, the ones I'm in contact with, are very confused about this whole genetic business. And I keep trying to explain to them, look, the genetics are very important to try to understand historically what happened. They have no bearing at all on whether you're Jewish or not. Judaism is not a genetic religion, and you become Jewish either by having Jewish parents or by converting to Judaism, not by having Jewish DNA. There is really no such thing in any strict sense as Jewish DNA.
But if you ask me, that is, Jew is not by chromosome. Jew is by soul, special soul, by the character of soul.
They use ancient names. They use references to ancient events that there's no way that they could have had knowledge of without having it be a part of their history.
Very few people ever heard of Bnei Menashe. And if we've done nothing else, we've made a lot more people aware of the Bnei Menashe, of their life, their desires and their hopes and dreams. The world will know a lot more about these people than they knew before.
Sam came up with the idea of a foundation that would help us to accomplish the things that we wanted to do. The name of the foundation is Hazak. Hazak means strength, and this is what we want to provide to these people. And not only just the Bnei Menashe, but to Jews around the world. The foundation opens the door for hopefully many other people to be part of this incredible mitzvah, to help these people and others find their way back home again.
Shankar, Arwadu